Is it an historical interest piece or propaganda to push the Western culture is based on white supremacy and exploitation narrative? Let's look at this weepy Washington Post article about a popular autumn beverage, and then you can decide. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV. Well, it certainly seems as if the team at the Washington Post either doesn't understand the distinction between article and leftist cultural Marxist polemic, or perhaps they do, and they have no problem moralizing over something that has absolutely nothing to do with any of us alive today. The Post's Maham Javed, October 6th, saw her polemic about the violent history of pumpkin spice released by the newspaper/website of the Washington Post, upon which it was then republished by many other sites as well. And she served up a story that acts not merely as an interest piece, but more than that. It acts as another brick in the wall of contemporary cultural Marxism, in which a certain crowd of sensitives can inform you that you're part of a legacy of lethality. Yes, you are enjoying the fruits of evil, and as a result of your dastardly participation in this, which actually is centuries ended, as a result of your dastardly and innocent, unknowing participation in this no longer extant activity, you are suspect, unless you change your colonial white supremacist ways, you see. Javed opens with this darkly portentous line, quote, "The invaders struck the island from 3 sides simultaneously." And then she rolls into the 1621 state corporate invasion of Indonesia, the Banda Islands to be precise, the invasion by the Dutch East India Company, describing the thousands slaughtered, enslaved, or starved to death due to their flight into mountainous terrain. And she quotes a university professor who adds reiterative thoughts. Quote, "The population of around 15,000 Bandanese was decimated to just a few hundred in a few months," said Adam Klulo, a historian and professor at the University of Texas at Austin. The Dutch company was later accused of carrying out what some describe as the first instance of corporate genocide. Of course, those who understand the nature of the polis know that all state entities are corporate in nature, and that the Dutch so-called company really was an arm of the Dutch government, as are so many so-called private corporations today. Some of us might recall the efforts of the Boston Tea Party participants to fight the corporate government hegemony of the British East India Tea Company and their parliamentary provided lock on American tea sales. But just to be sure that you understand your grave culpability in the pumpkin spice issue, just so that you understand that it's okay to drink British tea, but not the shadow-draped pumpkin spice, Javed includes Professor Klolo saying that it was all for nutmeg, the Banda Islands being pretty much the sole source of nutmeg at the time. You'd better put down that pumpkin spice and slowly back out of the coffee shop, my friend. And if you still need your eyes opened by the sensitives at the Washington Post, make sure you know this. Quote, "Some spices are part of a natural course of trade," said Sarah Wasberg Johnson, a food historian. "It just happens that the main spices in pumpkin spice are fraught with colonizer histories." We'd better grasp that, we dastardly spice-soaked sods. You know, beyond the lame virtue signaling about nutmeg and the long-gone tie to what's seen as the normative term colonialism, what might be most important to grasp here is something that collectivists rarely, if ever, will acknowledge. That's the fact that all political/state activities are forms of colonization into our lives. Every action government takes, from claiming the authority to make you pay for it, to engaging in threats that agents of government call regulations and rules, to literal takings of land and other physical property, they're all means by which these agents of the state invade our private lives and attack our natural rights to our property. In fact, one of the most pervasive forms of colonial invasion into our rights can be seen in what is called rent seeking, whereby special interests lobby those claiming government power over us and try to have that government power wielded to help the special interest at our expense and at the expense of competitors. These special interests often receive from the government monopoly or oligopoly status over a particular field. Hence, in the case of this horrid history of nutmeg, we discover that the Dutch United East India Company saw its origins in the March 1602 merger with the government of virtually all Dutch sailing interests headed to the Indies. This was ostensibly done as a form of protection from the Dutch state enemy of Portugal at the time. But it was also done to protect from competitors who might try to enter the market of sea trade and undercut the rent-seeking prices of the politically connected. If you want to read more about this, check out Volume 1 of Murray Rothbard's great book called Conceived in Liberty. It's actually a 5-part series from the great economist and economic historian, and you can find that over at the Mises Institute. So, regardless of this wake up to your own pumpkin spice link to oppression and wrongdoing, regardless of this polemic from the Washington Post, one can see that our reality is filled with terms and products that at one time in history might have been connected to colonialism or corporate favoritism. And we can see that it's nearly impossible to untangle all of these historical threads. The fact is that we're not responsible for those historical wrongs. We only can try to end the government corporate rent-seeking abuses we see today and try to teach people about the moral and economic benefits of peace and free trade, as opposed to politically protected attempts to steer consumers where special interests might want them steered. One thing is for sure, we need not feel guilty sipping a pumpkin spice latte while reading all this fascinating world history. Thanks for watching, one and all. Please like and subscribe and find us on Rumble, where they don't censor us. We are still on YouTube, where they do censor us. And please share the videos from whatever platform far and wide, multiple times with people, especially, as I often mention, with students who might be interested in this sort of thing, history, economics, ethics, that sort of thing. And of course, find us at MRCTV.org. MRCTV.org, the home of the Media Research Center, where you can find what the whole team is doing every day. While you're there, please visit the MRC Store and consider donating to the Media Research Center in its 36th year fighting left-wing bias. You can also find us on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter. And on Gab, I'm at Gardner Goldsmith, and on Twitter, I'm at Gard Goldsmith. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. For MRC TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.